Hi everyone, it's Patricia, Worby Alchemy Therapies and my emotional audit here. And today I'm following up on something I began to talk about last week about how emotional experiences or small t trauma gets stored in the body, causing symptoms in adult life. And I'm following up really because it's not very well known that emotions are not just feelings that kind of come and go. They are actually stored in the body as a sort of physiological regulators that change your set point for stress. So they cause all sorts of symptoms in adult life. Now, this has been in the news recently because I've been watching Dr. Chatterjee's fantastic YouTube channel. Um, Heads up to him, he does amazing work. UK doctor who sort of started out conventionally and has gone over to a more holistic model, was in the forefront of this mind-body connection understanding. And he interviews some amazing people. And he did a YouTube video with Dr. Russell Kennedy, who I have to say, I think he's Canadian. I think so. He's certainly North American, but he's doing exactly the kind of work I do. Perhaps slightly different modality, but definitely working with the body. And they were talking about how anxiety is a classic symptom of this kind of trauma response. Now, Dr. Kennedy talked about it being a sort of alarm signal in the body, which gets translated into the brain as a sense of anxiety. And your brain is trying to make sense of that and say what's wrong. And it comes up with all sorts of reasons for what's wrong, which may not be accurate because actually the originating signal is likely in a part of your body that you have no conscious awareness of. All you have is the symptom itself. So you don't know what caused it because usually it's imprints from very early on in your life. Abandonment trauma, humiliation, sometimes betrayals, any complex emotions that have not been able to be processed because you simply didn't have the support at the time. Or it has to be said, the brain integration really to deal with that, because as Dr. Kennedy rightly said, your brain isn't fully integrated until you're about 26 or 27. And, you only really have your emotional brain when you're born, with a little bit of your limbic system, which starts to come online around about the age of 1. And that's your hippocampus initially, and that's your memory storage or date stamp context center. And so that's why we don't have memories much before the age of 2 or 3, is because we simply can't store them. And so it's not your fault that you have these imprints that you can't deal with, but you need to understand that you can do something about it if you access the symptom that you're getting without fear. In other words, you need to go into the body and find this fear imprint from early life trauma and soothe it and acknowledge it and allow it instead of fighting it and pushing it down, which is what most people do. Now, I learned this the hard way because I had chronic fatigue and didn't understand that physical symptoms can come from these early life imprints that have changed the way my brain interprets threat. And so it's much more trigger happy and much more likely to signal threat when there is uncertainty or there are small life challenges. Now, what happened to me, long story, I'll make it short, was that a relationship broke down, and that was a life threat as far as my brain was concerned, because I had to move, I had to lose a lot of my sort of status and my nice house, and it was a massive shift for me and not really expected because it wasn't my decision. And if any of you have had that experience where a relationship breaks down and it wasn't your choice, you'll know what I mean. But as a highly sensitive person, this isn't something you can just kind of get on with and deal with. I mean, you do, but you're also struggling to process the meaning of that, the abandonment, the betrayal, the lies. It's all really deeply felt, and yet we somehow don't have the ability to rationalize or process it so that it can be over. And so these symptoms sit in the body, creating stress and muscle tension and gut churning and sometimes even heart pain. it's a really serious impact on most people, and you need to be able to know that there are things you can do, and it's not about taking a tablet to quench the symptom. Symptom suppression will maybe help you manage it in the short term, but it will never allow you to heal it in the longer term. And so learning to emotionally regulate is what really I do with clients, and I help them to find an internal sense of safety. Now, initially, that is by connecting with someone who feels safe, all right? Because we're interpersonal creatures. It's very difficult to do that on your own with a brain that's already dysregulated, a nervous system that's sending these horrible signals of unsafety. You need to be able to connect with someone who feels safe to you. And that's the whole point of therapy, really, is to have a person that you can lean into and actually feel, okay, this person understands what I'm going through and I'm not making it up. And it's not something I'm doing deliberately, which a lot of people have, and it creates a huge amount of shame that they can't solve it, they can't fix it. And that keeps it entrenched, of course, because shame is also a stressful emotion, you know, that I somehow don't belong or I'm not good enough. That's what shame is. And so helping somebody to connect is the way in which you overcome that. So compassion overcomes shame. And so we teach that person to learn to trust their body's signals without fear. And I've got this amazing little gimmick I want to show you here. Now, this is a slinky. Now, guys, as a child of the 70s myself, these slinkies were a fabulous toy then, but they're an amazing instrument to show you the nervous system and how it might work, okay? So if I were to use my slinky as a symbol of my nervous system, all right, what you're looking at right now is freeze response, all right, which is at the bottom of your autonomic nervous system set of responses. Nothing much happening. It's almost like your system has shut down because it can't deal with the overwhelm. And that likely happened when you were young at some point, particularly if you had some form of separation or childhood illness or parental divorce, anything that overwhelmed you at the time. But unfortunately, it becomes a pattern for the rest of your life, alleviated only when you get triggered by something, and then your system goes into fight and flight. Okay, and that feels like this. That's anxiety or sort of super stress. And there's not much in between those two: freeze, fight and flight. And so most people who've had kind of childhood trauma, even small t traumas like I've just described, don't have to have had abuse or abandonment. You can have little things that accumulate, may end up in this state as an adult. And that's how I've lived my whole life, between this and this. And it's really uncomfortable. And what we're trying to teach your nervous system to do is much more to regulate gently. All right. So to be able to veer between not so much freeze, because you don't want so much for that. You want this nice, gentle up and down progression from, you know, excitement to calm. And if we can teach your nervous system to do that, the symptoms simply melt away, because the symptoms are the body's way of informing you that something is wrong, something in your emotional landscape needs looking at and resolving and healing. And so that's what I do, guys. If you find that interesting, if you want to explore more, please follow the links below, and please subscribe. Please comment. I will always read them. All right. Take care, people. See you soon. Bye-bye.